She said my name like it meant something, soft, steady, almost claiming it. And I looked at her the way a man looks at a moment he knows will cost him something. That's how it always started with us. A glance that held too much. A touch that lingered too long. A silence thick enough to feel across a room. She called it love. I called it a lesson in disguise. And maybe the truth lives somewhere between those two words, pulsing beneath everything we refused to say out loud. The first time her hand brushed mine, it wasn't accidental. It was a quiet invitation disguised as warmth, a spark that moved up my arm before I had time to pretend I didn't feel it. She watched me with those eyes, the kind that search, the kind that ask for an answer without speaking. I should have stepped away. I should have told her we were treading on ground that both of us knew was risky. But the air between us was already charged, heavy, alive. And the moment stretched, like the world itself leaned in to listen. She believed in the kind of connection people write about, the soft, hopeful kind that heals. I'd learned to be cautious, to read the fine print of people's intentions. To her, every late-night call, every unplanned meeting, every heartbeat we shared meant something more. To me, it was a warning, a sign that something deeper was pulling us in, something we might not be ready for. That mismatch, that difference in how we defined what was happening, became the quiet tension shaping every moment between us. Still, there was a gravity there. A pull neither of us fully resisted. When she stood close enough that her breath warmed the space between us, I felt the truth rise in my chest, a truth I wasn't ready to face. And she looked up at me like she already knew it, like she'd already made her choice. The room felt smaller, the night felt longer, and every unspoken word sat between us like a spark waiting for oxygen. Just before she stepped forward, just before something irreversible could happen, she hesitated. One heartbeat. One breath. One look that held every question she was too afraid to ask. And that's where everything began to shift. She didn't step closer, but she didn't step back either. She just stood there, suspended between the choice she wanted to make and the one she was afraid of. Her breath trembled, barely visible in the soft glow of the room, and I felt it, that delicate shift in the air, like the world had paused to watch us figure ourselves out. Say something, she whispered, her voice steady but her eyes betraying the storm beneath. What do you want me to say? I asked. Maybe I said it too quietly. Maybe I already knew the answer. She swallowed, her gaze dropping for a second. When she looked back up, something raw flickered in her expression. That you feel it too, she said. Whatever this is. Whatever we keep pretending isn't happening. Her honesty hit harder than any confession could. I hadn't expected it, not like that, not poured so gently yet placed so intentionally at my feet. My chest tightened, the kind of pressure that warns you're standing at the edge of something real. I moved a little closer without thinking. Not touching her, not crossing any line, just close enough for her to feel that I hadn't walked away. Her breath caught. I felt it more than I saw it. It's not that simple, I said, though my voice came out rougher than I intended. It is, she replied softly. You feel something. I know you do. And maybe that was the problem. She wasn't wrong. Her fingers brushed the side of her arm, almost like she was steadying herself. When she reached up to push her hair behind her ear, her hand trembled. I don't think she realized it, but I did. And the protective part of me, the part one tried so hard to keep quiet, stirred awake. I stepped closer, just enough for the warmth of her body to graze the edge of my awareness. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with recognition. The tension thickened, warm and electric. You're going to make this hard, I murmured. She let out a faint laugh, breathy, almost breaking. You make it hard just by standing there. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it pulsed. Her gaze flicked to my lips for barely a second before she looked away, cheeks warming. I felt the pull deep in my bones. But neither of us closed the distance. Either of us stepped back. We just stayed there, caught in that fragile, dangerous space where one wrong breath could change everything. She was the first to look away, not out of disinterest, but out of fear of how much she was giving away by simply holding my gaze. Her shoulders rose with a quiet breath, the kind someone releases when they're trying to steady emotions that are already slipping out of their hands. "You always pull back," she murmured. "Every time it gets close." Her voice was soft, but it wasn't gentle. It carried weight, truth, disappointment she didn't want to admit. I stepped back half an inch, barely enough to be noticeable, but enough for her to feel it. She did. Her eyes flickered, a tiny flash of hurt she tried to hide. "It's not you," I said, which was the truth, the messy, tangled version of it. "It's everything else." She didn't move, but the silence around her stiffened. "Everything else," she repeated quietly, as though tasting the words. "You mean the things you never talk about?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because there were pieces of me I hadn't let anyone close enough to touch, past mistakes, broken promises, things I'd tried to bury but never fully outran. And she deserved someone without shadows trailing behind him. Her fingers brushed against mine, barely, like a feather passing over skin, but it jolted something deep inside me. A silent gasp broke through her lips, and she pulled her hand back as though the moment itself scared her. "You feel it," she whispered. "Don't pretend you don't." I didn't pretend. Not now. Not with her eyes searching mine like she was trying to see the truth I'd spent years hiding from. "I do," I admitted, so quietly she leaned in just to hear it. That slight movement, her leaning closer, nearly broke me. Her hair brushed my cheek, warm and soft, and her breath touched my skin like a promise either of us said. For a second, her lips hovered just close enough that I could feel the ghost of a moment that hadn't happened yet. But I pulled away, slowly, painfully, because staying that close felt like stepping into something I wasn't sure I could undo. She blinked, taken aback, but not angry. Just wounded. "Why do you keep running from me?" she asked, her voice shaking with something vulnerable. I exhaled, looking at the floor for strength I didn't have. "Because wanting you feels too easy," I said. "And I'm afraid of what easy could ruin." She stepped closer again, not touching me, but close enough that the heat between us rose like a tie neither of us could stop. "You're not running from me," she whispered, eyes locked to mine. "You're running from yourself." And for the first time, I didn't have an answer. Just longing. Just fear. Just the aching space between us that kept growing hotter, heavier, harder to resist. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls had quietly stepped closer just to listen. She stood in front of me, her breath short, her eyes fierce with a question she no longer had the strength to hide. And I could feel it, the tension in her hands, the trembling restraint in her voice, the way her entire body seemed pulled toward mine as if resisting gravity itself had become impossible. "Tell me the truth," she whispered. "Not the careful version. Not the safe one. The real truth." Her voice didn't shake, but her shoulders did, just barely. That tiny tremor was what cracked something in me. I closed the distance by a step, slow enough to give her a chance to retreat, but she didn't move. Her lips parted, her breath caught, and in that moment her eyes told me everything she couldn't say. She wanted closeness. She wanted honesty. She wanted me, not the guarded version, not the distant one, but the one I'd buried under years of quiet fears. "You scare me," I confessed, quietly enough that she leaned in to hear it. "Not because of anything you've done, but because you make me feel things I'm not used to feeling." Her gaze locked onto mine, steady, warm, unflinching. "So feel them," she whispered. "For once, just feel." She lifted her hand hesitantly, stopping inches from my chest, not touching, but close enough for the warmth to seep through my shirt. She looked at her own hand, like she wasn't sure if she had the right. And then, slowly, with the gentlest exhale, her fingers brushed against me. It wasn't a full touch. Just the edge of her fingertips, a feather-soft graze. But it sent a shiver up my spine so strong I had to close my eyes. When I opened them, she was watching me with a mix of fear and hope, like she was waiting to see if she'd crossed the line. "You have no idea," I whispered. What'd you do to me? Her lips parted, a tiny, breathless sound escaping, not a word, not even a gasp, just emotion breaking through. She took another small step in, her forehead almost touching mine. The warmth of her skin radiated into the air between us, turning the space into something molten. I feel it too, she breathed, her voice barely sound. Every time you look at me. I feel it everywhere. Her confession hit me like heat. Intense. Unavoidable. I leaned in, just enough for our breaths to mix, just enough for her eyelashes to brush mine when she blinked. Not a kiss. Not yet. But it felt like the world tilted forward, urging us into something inevitable. And then, we both stopped. Hovering there, suspended in the kind of silence that could break a person. The moment didn't explode. It just burned, silently, powerfully, beautifully, right on the edge of what we were both aching for. The rain started first, soft, steady, like the night was trying to calm them before everything inside finally broke free. It tapped gently against the windows, a quiet rhythm that filled the silence they stood in. She was framed in the dim light of the room, her hair slightly tousled, her chest rising with slow, uncertain breaths. Something about her in that moment, the softness, the vulnerability, the quiet longing, pulled him toward her without hesitation. He stepped closer, close enough for the warmth of her body to spread through the inches between them. She didn't move away. Her eyelashes fluttered, her breath catching as if she had been waiting for this shift for far too long. Are you sure? He whispered, voice low, steady, but laced with a trembling kind of hope. She nodded, not with certainty, but with surrender, the kind that comes when a person stops resisting what their heart has been begging for. I'm tired of pretending, she breathed. Tired of holding everything in. He reached up slowly, giving her every chance to stop him. His fingers brushed her cheek, barely a touch, just warmth grazing warmth, and she melted into it like her skin recognized his before her mind could. Her eyes closed for a heartbeat, then opened again, full of something raw and unguarded. Their foreheads touched first. A soft meeting. A quiet collapse of distance. Her breath mingled with his, warm, uncertain, wanting. He felt it, every unspoken word trembling on her lips, every unshed confession hiding in her eyes. You don't have to be afraid with me, she whispered, her voice shaking with tenderness. He exhaled shakily, the walls he'd kept around his heart for years thinning in the glow of her honesty. That's what scares me. She lifted a hand and rested it gently on his neck. Her touch wasn't urgent, it was slow, deliberate, a silent promise. His eyes closed as he leaned into the warmth of her palm. It felt like permission. Like release. Like coming undone quietly in someone's arms. The space between them dissolved. Her breath melted into his, soft and warm. Not a kiss, not yet, but something even more intimate. A sharing of breath. A slow surrender. Her fingers lingered along his jaw, tracing him as if memorizing the shape of someone she had no intention of letting slip away again. When he finally guided her into his arms, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was gentle, two souls folding into each other as if they were always meant to fit. Their bodies pressed close, not in hunger, but in truth. Heat rose between them, slow and steady, like embers catching fire. Her lips brushed his cheek, feather-light, trembling. His hands rested on her waist, steady but reverent. Their bodies spoke the words neither of them could say, words about longing, about aching, about the quiet desperation of wanting someone too deeply to hide it anymore. The rain outside grew heavier, but inside, everything felt softer. Warmer. Their breaths mingled, their hearts found the same rhythm, their closeness humming with the kind of intimacy that didn't need explanation. They didn't rush. They didn't hurry. They simply let go, into the warmth, into the quiet, into each other, letting the night wrap around them like it had been waiting for this moment just as much as they had. The world outside blurred. The room faded into shadows and soft light. And the two of them, finally let themselves fall. Morning arrived softly, almost apologetically, pale light slipping through the curtains like it was afraid to touch them too soon. She woke first. Not with panic, not with regret, but with that still, breathless confusion that comes when emotion hits before memory does. Then she felt the warmth beside her. His steady breathing. The quiet weight of what they'd allowed themselves the night before. For a moment, she didn't move. She just watched him, the looseness in his expression, the softness, he never showed awake. Something warm pressed against her chest. Something dangerous. Then the questions came. What now? Was it love? Or loneliness? Or both? She sat up slowly, careful not to wake him. But he stirred anyway, sensing her distance before he even opened his eyes. You're quiet, he murmured, voice rough with sleep. I'm thinking. She didn't try to hide it. He sat up too, rubbing a hand across his face. The space between them felt different now, not empty, but full. Heavy. A mix of everything they'd said without words the night before and everything they were too afraid to say now. I shouldn't have let it happen, he whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. Her heart tightened. Do you regret it? No, he said instantly, too fast, too honest. He exhaled. That's the problem. She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting. So, what are we now? He shook his head slowly. I don't know. His voice cracked, just a little. But I know it wasn't meaningless. She swallowed hard, eyes burning with something between relief and fear. Then why does it feel like you're already pulling away? Before he could answer, a sharp knock shattered the stillness. They froze. Another knock. Firmer. She grabbed the nearest shirt, his, slipping it over her shoulders. He stood, tension tightening through every muscle. Are you expecting someone? She whispered. He didn't answer. But the look in his eyes said everything. No, but he feared exactly who it might be. Another knock. Then a voice, muffled through the door. I know you're in there. We need to talk. Her pulse jumped. His jaw clenched. The intimacy of the night before suddenly felt fragile, like a flame someone was about to open a window on. She touched his arm gently. Who is that? He hesitated. Then answered with a truth heavy enough to shift everything between them. Someone I should have told you about. Their connection deepened in an instant, not through closeness, but through the weight of what was coming. And the morning, once soft, turned sharp with new tension. The door opened on a truth that should have broken everything, but somehow, it didn't. Not this time. The conversation that followed was quiet, difficult, honest. He didn't hide. She didn't run. And when the door finally closed again, leaving the two of them alone in the settling silence, something inside both of them had shifted. He stood there for a long moment, shoulders heavy, breath unsteady. She watched him, not with anger, but with a fragile ache. You could have told me, she murmured. I know, he said, voice cracking. I was afraid that if you knew the mess I came with, you'd walk away before I ever got the courage to ask you to stay. She stepped toward him then, slow, unsure, but willing. The morning light framed her face in quiet warmth. I'm not asking for perfect, she whispered. Just truth. Just you. His eyes met hers, exhausted, relieved, humbled. He reached out hesitantly, as if afraid his touch might break her. But when his fingers brushed her arm, she didn't flinch. She leaned in. They stood close, breaths mingling again, but this time it wasn't fire pulling them together. It was something steadier. Something quieter. Something real. I don't know how to do this right, he whispered. You don't have to, she replied. Just don't shut me out. He exhaled, shaky, but softer now. And then, with a slowness that felt like choosing, he lifted his hand and rested his lips gently against her forehead. Not passionate. Not rushed. Just warm. Just honest. Just enough. She closed her eyes, letting that moment settle into her bones. Letting it feel like peace instead of fear. Like a beginning instead of a mistake. When he pulled back, she held his hand. So, is this the part where you call it love? She teased, voice trembling with something hopeful. He gave a small, real smile, the kind she hadn't seen from him before. No, he murmured. Not yet. Her breath hitched. Then what is it? He squeezed her hand gently. A lesson, he said softly. That maybe, just maybe, love isn't something to run from. She smiled, the slow, warm kind that reaches the eyes before the lips. And in the quiet of that morning, with truth finally standing between them instead of fear, they chose peace. Not certainty. Not perfection. But peace. And sometimes, that is enough.